Hey, we're live.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nikki, and I help entrepreneurs regenerate the ecosystem, social equity, and themselves.
Hey there. And I'm Lakita Williams. I work with entrepreneurs to build and design their company culture.
Together, we are doing a series of tea and talk Q&As and also offering services to businesses and organizations, purpose-driven businesses and organizations that want to do company culture work that has diversity and inclusion at the center. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. This is our third Tea and Talk, Nikki. I feel like it's flown by.
I know. And speaking of tea and talk, I wanted to just name the tea that we're doing today. So this mug for me is really special because it's a Thomas Kincaid mug. And say what you want about Thomas Kincaid. My grandmother really loved him. And when she passed away in 2012, there was a Thomas Kincaid book on her shelf. And it was the first thing that I took from her house in her room after she passed away to read. And so it was really special. So this mug is really special. And then this sweater is the sweater that my baby sleeps with in his crib since he doesn't sleep with me anymore. So I just feel like I'm wrapped in between my generations.
Love.
My grandmother and my baby, and it just feels really sweet and special.
So beautiful. And what are you drinking today?
I'm drinking passion tea today.
So good.
Some lemongrass. Yes. I was drinking when we first did it, and so it's now back around, and I'm appreciating that.
Take it back. So I am doing green tea today, and my mug, we're both sentimental, is actually from SCAD. And I got this mug when we dropped my son off for his first semester in college. And he's a junior now. So it's Savannah College of Art and Design. So he's actually in school there in the South, and he is a junior. He'll be going into his senior year next year, and I can't believe I made it. But I love this mug, and I always drink out of it when I'm thinking about him. And so definitely the right pick for today. And I'm actually drinking green tea today. Just get a little more pep in my step. It started to rain here in Seattle again, so bring out the good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. And so let's jump into some announcements.
Yes.
I think we have here. Mm-hmm. So just an update for everyone. As Nikki said, this is our third Tea and Talk, and we're going to give you some additional details soon about engaging with us for Tea and Talk that is going to be coming up for us. Nikki actually next week is going to be at the Social Venture Institute in North Bay, California, next week on the 10th and 11th. Is that right, Nikki?
Yeah, that's right. So it's the Social Venture Institute Women Conference, and it's going to be in Petaluma, and I'll be offering little small 20-30 minute free sessions around diversity and inclusion in company culture. So if you happen to be there, you can hit me up there in person.
That is perfect. Such a good opportunity. So definitely take her up on that. And for my folks who will be at Boulder Startup Week or visit in Boulder or live in Boulder, definitely come see me there. I'll be there May 15th through the 17th, leading a session on both company culture and systems to support inclusivity, as well as doing some 30-minute sessions there where we can offer some coaching and do a little bit consulting around your company culture and inclusion. So we are super excited to connect with you guys out in real life, in person. So definitely hit us up or DM us if you'll be in any of those areas in the coming weeks.
Yeah. And then we're going to be continuing these Tea and Talks as well. So look out for an announcement about we're just taking a couple weeks off to reset. And so if you have questions, do send them along, because we're going to be aggregating them during that 2-week reset, and then we're going to come back in action. So today our topic is actually us and who we are and why we work. And a part of why that felt really important is because the why and knowing your why as you're building a company, or even as you're doing your company resets when it comes to your purpose and your mission, the seed of your why is the thing that helps grow an inclusive culture. knowing it, sharing it, being clear about it. So we wanted to share that for ourselves and just give a little bit of background. Well, there's two Black women, two
Yeah.
mamas who are doing such system-driven work. And I would love to begin with you, Lakia.
Sure. So, a little bit about my background. I actually started my corporate career in sales, which gave me a huge opportunity and like hit me one-on-one with like management one-on-one after going into leadership there. And then decided to pursue a master's degree in social work. And with that master's degree, the focus was always on bringing this idea of social work, systems thinking to companies and organizations in order to make better workplaces. So as long as I can remember, that's always been a part of my personal mission. That really accelerated for me when we had a medical challenge with our youngest daughter, and I was trying to manage that and lead in a team and work. And so it really hits close to home. And I certainly believe in the transformative power of work and connections that you can have inside organizations, and wanting those or that to happen for the good rather than for things that are negative that we've seen in many company cultures. So after that, I joined Amazon naturally to bring some focus on company culture and employee experience there, and worked on employee experience programs, organizational design, and also coaching there, and became a certified coach during my time there. And it's just been the perfect culmination of bringing all of those things together. So working with leaders across organizations, working on culture specifically and the systems that impact how our culture is expressed, because it's super important. And in addition to that, doing some direct coaching. So after finishing up with Amazon, went on to launch CoCreate Work, in which I've been the founder for about 8 months now. And this has been a wild journey. And in my work, I primarily partner with founders of organizations and their teams to talk about what exactly does your culture look like. And as you are growing, how do you want that culture to look? And what systems do you need to put in place to support that? So we work on everything from purpose and how to create a purpose-driven organization, how to create an organization that's primed for learning, which is super important right now. How do we reskill and provide support for employees who need to learn new ways of working or learn new skills, and putting those systems in place, as well as everything from making decisions effectively as a group, leading effective meetings, because we've all been in meetings that weren't effective or were effective or where others' voices were heard. So we work on all of that from end to end, and really taking a coaching approach to all of that. So it's not a like sage from the stage, like here's a consultant book of like what you need to do and you go off and do that, but really partnering with clients directly to bring about that change, because it can definitely be a challenge. And so partnership as you walk through that is critical. And so that's a little bit about me and like why I do this. My biggest purpose is to help organizations, like purpose-driven organizations, succeed and be successful in building optimal cultures that allow employees to both have a great experience at their company, but then go on to do amazing things in other areas of their life and with their next company. So that is what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you?
My purpose with this work, I love how you went through a little bit of a retrospective of your career and how you came to this. And I think if I had to do that from my perspective, the way that I hold diversity and inclusion is from the frame of sustainability. And I fell in love with sustainability in college as a concept because it just felt much more holistic than environmentalism. Because the strict definition of sustainability is healthy economies, healthy ecology, healthy equity. And so I use like ecology, economy, equity, and the 3 E's as my frame psychologically for sustainability. And it's somewhat easy at this point to have two, but having all three of them really functioning healthily at the same time can be like rocket science. And I've devoted my entire career to trying to balance the three of those for real. And so I look at the social equity piece of sustainability and how balancing social equity when you have environmental goals. If you're in the nonprofit sector, you're not trying to make personal money, so your engagement with the economy looks really different. And now I'm really, my firm, Soil and Shadow, that I've been running for 5 years, got really interested in the for-profit expression of that, because trying to actually make a profit in the current system in a way that has social equity and the environment healthily balanced is calculus. And so I'm really interested in supporting the triple bottom line in both businesses and nonprofits that manage that. And I think the only other thing I would say is the systems part of me with diversity and inclusion. I've said this before, and I feel like I'm going to say it almost every tea and talk, that have diversity is something that you can try to plan around and manage around and attracting more people of diverse backgrounds into your business or your organization. But then company culture is like, it's the sandwich, right? So you get diversity, then you have a really good company culture, and your healthy company culture is what leads to inclusion. So there's a way that diversity and inclusion, the and, is right next to company culture, which is a part of why I'm so excited about Lakita and I's partnership, because having a healthy company culture is what means that everyone has agency. So I'm really interested in the systems and the infrastructure and the processes that support everyone in a group feeling empowered to show up as their full selves and in full sovereignty and take personal responsibility for their own experience so that we can grace with ourselves and grace with each other. That's a little bit of the behind the scenes for me and why I do this work.
Yeah.
It also felt important to name because Lakita and I are a partnership. I focus on the triple bottom line and she focuses on purpose-driven companies. And they're really similar, but they're slightly different. And so us coming together to really bring our Voltron powers to unite is special, and wanted to lift that up a little bit.
Yeah, the magic. And I will add to where you mentioned empowerment. For both Nikki and I, we are really invested in an empowerment model when we partner with organizations. So we are there to help you better understand how to identify these tools, how to use these tools, and how to leverage them within your system, which is your organization, and adapt that way after we're gone, because it does take continued investment and continued work. So we are very much focused on an empowerment model of a consultant and coaching and partnership with everyone that we work with and serve.
Exactly.
Yes.
So speaking of empowerment, let's go get to some Q&As here. I had a question come in last week, and I'm so sorry that I didn't get to that question last week, but we're going to get to it now. So it's from a woman who says that she works with social justice organizations on strategic planning and deep engagement. A need for self-reflection, personal and organizational, almost always arises. Can we talk about how we can use emotional intelligence frameworks to develop the self-awareness to sustain movement work?
This is a really good question. And I think, so how to use emotional intelligence frameworks to develop self-awareness further and helping to sustain social justice work. Is that right?
To sustain social movement work, yeah.
Social movement, perfect. Okay. So the one thing that I'm going to start with or recommend that anyone start with when they're thinking about self-awareness or trying to increase self-awareness is this idea of reflection. So sometimes you are going to notice that you have a reaction or need to be more socially aware in the moment. Sometimes a few minutes will pass, or it'll be the next day and you'll recognize that you are having some sort of feeling or reaction to something. And at that point, it's really important for reflection. I think also what I recommend is constant reflection. So for some people that's meditation, for some people that's journaling, for some people that's just walking. And I know that this sounds really personal, but the personal is the professional, right? You bring yourself and your personality to the work that you do every day. And so the work really needs to start with you. So start with reflection would be my recommendation. Like, what is causing this reaction? What specifically was it when this person said, or when I experienced this? Here is how I started to feel. And sometimes you'll notice the feeling before you know exactly what it is that caused you to feel that way. So then write out or think about specifically how did you feel at that time? And then take this question, which is, what would someone with the complete opposite view of me feel? If I feel this way about this particular situation or what's happening, what would someone with the opposite view take? And sometimes that can take you to a place that's really way outside of your comfort zone. And that doesn't mean that you accept it, right? But what it allows you to do is like to really put yourself in the place, or, in the footsteps of someone else, which is a part of what empathy is to understand someone else's perspective. But when you say the complete opposite view, I think it just helps to wrap you more and put you in that situation more. And then once you understand that other persons are thinking about that perspective, then that helps to bring, like, how does this then mesh with the way I'm viewing the situation? Is there a different way for me to think about it, or is it not? Sometimes having empathy or awareness of someone else's position doesn't change your position, but it definitely helps you to constantly check your position or be aware of how you're viewing a situation. And then acknowledge what you're feeling. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to change your perspective or what you're feeling, but at least in doing this reflection exercise, you're thinking about it in a very deep way, which is critical to self-awareness. Like, you have to think about what is an opposite view of this. So that would be my recommendation, would be around reflection. What about you, Nikki? Anything to add to this one?
Yeah. So I love that you started with how someone is feeling and starting with reflection, because I feel like mine was actually pretty systems oriented, which was around having tension and conflict and challenge based procedures within organizations, especially movement based organizations, that begin and forward self-action as the resolution. So if there's a conflict, or if there's tension, or if there's anything coming up, starting with individual, how can I change my own behaviors to resolve some of my discomfort? And that being the first step before looking at the system, before looking at the other person with whatever it is. And then those things can come in later. But by beginning and having the conflict resolution policy be, I'm not going to actually hear you talk about each other. I'm going to hear you reflect on how you contributed to this situation and what you're going to do about it. And it's separated from the other person for a second. I feel like when I've seen that done, it's nuanced, and it can be very difficult, because I also feel like a lot of my experience with social justice and movements is that attending to the systemic harm can become the first step and can become the first frame for dealing with things. But then that means that it's external. And I think reestablishing one's sovereignty, that I actually have control over my space and agency over my space and agency over my ability to care for myself, can just help reset a conflict, so that then attention to the system and to the external circumstances comes from a place of power. That's what I would say to that.
Yeah, I love it. I am also having a thought around just this place, like I think we both confirmed this, like starting with self first, and thinking about like what is it that you're feeling and what is your position, and starting the walk from there, because the conversations just happen so much easier when you start with yourself and ownership for how you are responding to a situation. And again, it doesn't mean that anything changes, but it's just you're starting from self first, which I love that you added that. And I think that is something that organizations can really build in as a part of their culture. If we talk about like, here is how we approach things as well. So we have another question. Let me jump to it. I'm going to pull it up.
And we're going to do this one brief to make sure that we get everybody off. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Marie Hunter, who is watching and commenting up a storm. Hey, girl.
Hey, Marie. All right, perfect. Okay, so I think this question came around, yesterday was Equal Pay Day for a group of women, but we know that Equal Pay Day for women of color comes much later in the year, so a lot of work to do there. And someone came with a question about that they were getting a lot of pushback about talking about Equal Pay Day, and asked if we had any insight on how to navigate pushback and how to deal when a culture is not supportive of these sorts of conversations.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this is a real one, right? And part of my diversity and inclusion work, and part of why I also say to start with the self, is I usually ask myself the question, how generous can I be in whatever circumstance I'm in before I start to change things? Because ultimately, that may not be the right culture for you, especially if it's not supportive, okay, and you're a woman. But before you even start to get there, I feel like the first question is, how generous can I be? Because I try to change things from an asset-based point of view, and starting with whatever is in alignment with what I would like to see happen, focus my attention there, grow that, and then see if that can shift the larger system. So is the whole environment not supportive? Are there certain staff people that are supportive? Are there certain executives that are supportive? Can you have conversations with them and start to work with them to see if you can create some internal change within the system? Because it's always also seeing if you can shift things before choosing to break relationship is the way to build connection and strength in the world, period. So if you are going to make a decision to leave a place because it's not supportive of that culture, knowing that you did what you could to try to maintain and shift the relationship in a healthy direction will also help you look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. So start with generosity with yourself, with them, see where there's momentum, see if you can forward that momentum, and then do everything you can before you make a decision to shift. Those would be my recommendations.
Good one. I definitely concur with this idea of, well, first I would just say, sometimes the loudest voice, it doesn't represent what other people are thinking. And sometimes voices for good aren't heard over the shouting of a voice that's having pushback around this an idea like diversity, inclusion, equity. So, and it's not for you to solve that person, right? So I would just say, and you could choose to engage with this person, or you could choose to, as Nikki said, engage with others who are supportive of the mission and what needs to change within the organization. And so my recommendation would be just to take a step back and do some analysis there. Ultimately, just someone who does systems work, if the system doesn't support it, and there is no momentum to turn things around, it might not be the right fit for you. It takes a lot of emotional work to be a sole person or one of very few trying to push back against, anything, exclusion, racism, sexism in an organization. And so understanding first, like, is there a way forward, which I think is similar to what you were saying, Nikki, and identifying that way forward and coming in community with other people. Sometimes the pushback that you get, again, doesn't represent what is true about that organization. It may be a single voice. And so get into the bottom of that and understanding what is the organization's stance and what are they willing to do. to address issues like these. I think it's social media. I don't know. Like, because I can imagine it sounds like from the question, you're getting this sort of pushback from folks on social media. And Nikki, I don't know if you have some tips for dealing with, I don't know, trolls, because in that case, that might just be an ignore situation.
Yeah. My thing with internet trolls is that everyone needs love, and we all try to create connection and love in ways that are sometimes counterproductive. Internet trolls are reaching for connection of some kind, and that is the only way they know how to get it in that moment. But you always have sovereignty and control over how people engage you. And if you are not open to engaging that person's way of engaging love, you can create a boundary. And I usually say boundaries with internet trolls, because the level of sophistication that it takes to get from you're trying to engage me and create connection, but in a way that is potentially counterproductive. Let's work on that so that we can engage and create connection in a healthy way. It's very hard to run that track on social media. It has been done, but it requires an energy expenditure. And so it just means that you need to decide whether it's worth your time and worth your energy expenditure to do that. But I don't want to go too much farther because we are at our mark. So just wanted to do some brief recap of the announcements before we go. And that is that we've been doing these tea and talks for the last 3 weeks. We're going to take a couple of weeks of a break, and then we're going to be back in action after that. So please send us your questions. Thing number 2, if you want to engage with Lakita and I in person, I'm going to be at SVI Women next week in Petaluma from the 10th to the 11th. Lakita is going to be in Boulder at Boulder Startup Week from May 15th to the 17th. And we look forward to engaging with you in the future. Thank you so much for watching and for being with us for these last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Take care, everybody. Bye.